Let me ask you a question. When you post some things on the internet, do you think twice about if it's public, only shared with a few friends? Do you think about when you make passwords, do you really use complex passwords and you use multi-factor authentication where available? If you answer these questions with yes, then I think you're not that different from me. I would say I'm very security concerned, very cautious about what I post where, etc., etc. And so we probably have some struggles we share. What is interesting to me is, as part of my job at Microsoft, I get to talk to some of the most well-known brands. And when we talk about security, we talk about hybrid, one of the things that guaranteed always comes up is security. And customers have a lot of very good questions and detailed questions they want to know and they want to ask. Sometimes I get to talk to account teams that work with a company, and in surprisingly many cases, I'm a customer myself of the customer of Microsoft I talk to. That could be a bank, that could be the airline, that could be the hotel chain I stayed in, back then when we traveled, and hopefully again when we start to travel. And sometimes I'm in these meetings or in these calls and they say, hey, customer needs to know this, or customer asks, I need to know this. And I go to that website from that particular company and I start searching and I'm like, hey, I'm a customer here. I want to know what transparency do they give to me as a customer, right? And you know what I found out? I actually don't recall ever finding a website that tells me the security or security compliance certification any of these companies have to me as their customer. It's just not there. But I know they're security concerned, right? Because they do ask a lot of very good questions, a lot of very detailed questions. But all I find is almost general statements. Best encryption, industry best practices, things like that, things that my mom would understand, but between you and I don't mean anything. It's at this point empty words. I need I need confirmation from, let's say, an audit that says you have this certification or whatever. In fact, when I was looking for a password manager, I did my usual research. I reached out to their support and I was like, hey, I was wondering because I couldn't find information on your website about what security compliance certifications you own or you have. They wrote me back and they said that they're using AWS and that AWS is ISO 27001 certified. For those who don't know, ISO 27001 is a certification that IT departments can get on the best practices or the practice that they're following on how they're doing IT that is considered secure. Now, it's not a very specific cloud provider certification. The cloud provider needed so that the enterprise IT can get the certification, but for example, ISO 27018 is much more specific for cloud providers or hosters, and then there's many more. If you never heard about it, Azure has over 90 of those, so there is a lot of certifications out there. My point is, it's complicated, and if this password manager company just tells me that AWS follows security, that doesn't mean that they do, right? It could be that their developers all have full admin access and that things can happen like with this known company with cameras where, all of a sudden creepers talk through the speakers to their child in a room because, they didn't follow those best practice guidelines, or these online storage service that saved the password in clear text got hacked and a lot of people lost their files because again, they didn't follow best practices. The news is full about hack attacks, a lot of security holes, and sometimes even if you have all the best measures, all the best practices, you're certified up and down the yin-yang, it can still happen. However, it does give some trust knowing that there is a rigorous testing and looking at on how your processes are and how you work. So how do we solve that? Because, while my mama understands if it says like follow the stringent security, blah, 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 or military grade security, it really doesn't mean anything, but how do I explain to her what certification she should look for in what industry? That's impossible. We can't do that. We can't expect that a normal consumer would ever be able to understand it all. How would you feel about if there would be an icon which is an icon that you put on products. Anything that has to do with electronics, software, hardware, smart speakers, smartphones, insurance, your school, whatever there might be, that would tell people or the consumer friendly that this company doesn't just do the bare minimum that the law requires, but actually goes the extra mile to really protect your information. You know, something like we have with organic, which everybody knows what organic means, or at least half of what organic means. GMO free or fair trade. Those have become icons that products use so that consumers can make better informed decisions when they purchase groceries. So why not duplicate that into the security space or cybersecurity space? And on the back end, you could even say, okay, you know, if you're in a healthcare business, you also need at a minimum the HIPAA compliance. They have to be that anyway, but just saying so they can check that off. If you're in banking, you may need PCI for transaction and so on. So there is like, you know, you could make it industry specific, but as far as my family would be concerned, all they need to look for is for this icon. Because I struggle with it to find insurance or find the information about what the insurance does to protect my information. I sometimes don't buy smart speakers or certain gadgets, gizmos, because, you know, before you know, your smart refrigerator has malware on it that, you know, is listening to the whole traffic in your wireless network and, you know, gives that information out there, and before you know, you have identity theft or something else bad happening to you. And if I would know that, you know, there is like this icon where I don't have to spend hours researching it, I would find it helpful. But it's not about me, it's about you. I wrote a blog post in 2017 about this. I will link it down there. Please read it. And when you're watching this video, give me a thumbs up if you think an icon would help, and a thumbs down if you think it's unnecessary, nobody gives a, then just give me the thumbs down. But it is something that has been in my mind since 2015, so quite a few years, 2015, 2016. And the older I seem to get, the more I think about it, that I do believe something like this is needed. But now I want to hear from you. And with that, D. Dave Kurt out.